All right, so it's been a great week this past week. It's interesting when you have high school and middle school, and then the differences between the two. The lecture that was given to the middle schoolers to be quiet, could hear a pin drop. Like they did not move. But one of the things that I noticed the difference too was when I speak to college students, what do they tend to have in their hand? It's actually kind of refreshing that no one had devices in their hands. It's interesting to see how that's just so normal for all of us, even as adults, if we're not careful. So we're going to be tonight kind of a little bit of introduction and talking about some stuff, but then I've got some work for us to do. So a place I want us to focus in terms of our own personal, what do we do here? What do we do with this? We kind of mentioned last week, looking kind of at what's happening with our kids and technology and the way that it's impacting them. It's actually kind of scary and the way it's affecting them. But the biggest thing I'm seeing when I'm talking to families, the biggest influence and the biggest, I would say, loss of our kids, to literally put it that way, is their online peers. So yes, it matters who their friends are that hang out with down the street or at school or in youth group even. It matters their influence. But what I'm seeing again happen is online is someone they've never met and never will meet. It's one of the biggest draws away and into an ideology or some agenda or some push somewhere, whatever that might be, whether it's towards grooming, towards pornography, or to actual traffic or other horrible, heinous things. Like that's it. So one of the biggest point that I can come back to is either you do or someone else does. On these topics that honestly none of us want to talk about. Had a student, I can't remember if I shared this, but I had a student a few years ago, she sent nude pictures of herself to a guy. And he blackmailed her. Said, send more. And all of her friends said, do it. You have to, because he'll share those pictures you sent. And luckily she called me. She was one of my students. So I rushed over to campus and got her to the police station. They reported, found out he had like 26 Facebook accounts, and there's no way they're going to catch him, but it goes into the cyber division, they do whatever, and nothing happened. But what really broke my heart was her friend's encouragement was go there. Just do what they're telling you to do. And so we dealt with that, and it's heartbreaking. You want to kind of think, well, why would you do that? Well, she has a story too. There's a reason why she did that. There's a reason why there was brokenness there, and that there was this draw towards pleasing someone for some reason. This is what I talked about with the kids Thursday. I guess that was Thursday. And so if you want to see this and look at kind of this whole thing, and this would help you in your conversation, I would suggest sit down with your kids and watch. So I have multiple of these on my YouTube channel where you can sit down and watch that and talk through what did the Bible say? That was the main focus. What does the Bible say of your design, who you are, how God made you? And so use that as a conversation tool. That's a critical one. This is part of why it scares me. Romans 1:24-32. Therefore God gave them over in the simple desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. I don't like that. I want my God to put some strings on me and tell me what to do. Make me obey. That's my desire. And he goes, you know what? I love you too much for that. I give you free will. There's no need for the cross if he puts strings on us. There's no need for Christ's death if he made us obey. We have free will. Our kids have free will. But then it gets worse. Verse 32. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. This is what I'm seeing in the church. Parents who think they're loving their kids and endorsing things they should not endorse. People who think they're doing the right thing, honestly, doctors and others who think they're doing the right thing, and actually, no, you're not. And so that's a concern. So what I'm going to do right now is kind of pass out these. If you can help me pass these out real quick. These are a little kind of a worksheet, if you will. That should be enough there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is just a starting point for you to think through, create your own version of this, whatever. This is one that I'm just looking at lots of other things kind of put together. First section, dangers. We have to identify what are the dangers. What are the threats? What are those things that I need to be careful of and pay attention to? So what are some dangers that you can think of for your kids when it comes to online, the online world, technology? What are some dangers?
Inspiration.
The inspiration. Oh gosh, so true. Yes, the inspiration. The encouragement to be unhealthily thin, yes. What else? Predators. We want to act like they don't exist. We want to live in a la la land and act like everyone's nice next to me, church going, look, Jesus loving. It's not true. They are predators. Yes. Addiction. Anything can become one, but there are some pretty big ones. And ironically, porn is right there with any other hard drug you could think of. So is gaming, just getting too wrapped up in that world. What else? Bullying, absolutely, yes.
A lot of Christian teachers or authors are on there saying things just that may not line up with what Scripture says. It's very packaged well, and so it's very enticing.
Yes, that one scares me all the time. It makes me want to go. I mean, it does. I go research stuff, but it's like I don't know who to trust. Some author who you did trust who's now gone off the deep end, and you didn't know that, and now you're reading their book, and now you're wondering, questioning, or maybe you're not questioning. You took a hook, line, and sinker. That's scary. Christian authors. Yeah. What else?
Just the fakeness and the filters of what you see may not be who they are, what they look like.
Yeah, deep fakes is the big version of that. They can literally take anyone. There was one recently, a few months ago, of Elon Musk saying things, mouth moving, everything is all AI created. It's really scary what they're doing. They can make political figures say things they never said. They can. How do you trust that? Yeah. What else?
Influencers.
Mm-hmm. All of them, yes. There is such a connection right now to some of these young influencers that when they get that stardom so young, it's like it short circuits their brain. Right now, who are they talking about? That was at a certain football game this weekend.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift. Been interesting the last couple of days listening to some podcasts and conversations about her. It's like someone who got fame way too young. And can you trust your world then? No, you can't. I don't know her at all, but it's like, is she more addicted to the high of a new relationship and then the breakup and then writing a song? Like, is she going to ever be able to find actual relationship? If you go to, I think it used to be on Netflix, but Lady Gaga's documentary, I think I only made it 5 minutes. I think I finally turned it off, but heartbreaking. She doesn't know who to trust. Do they want my money? And so they become someone that's jaded, and they're influencing our kids big time. I was born this way, and all sorts of other stuff. What else? Here's something to think about. So, excessive texting. We're going to talk about that in a second. It's amazing the way we can communicate. It's amazing how technology has helped us communicate, but it's actually a problem. I've sat with college age and young adults who are looking at their phone over this text. But she sent me this text message, and they're reading it over and over and over. They're so broken up, it's not even funny. But because I have this record now, and I have this, they ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and get lost. Versus when things are said and fade away. There's something about, which I know we have old love letters and things like that, old school way, but texting is a whole other ball of wax, but it's changed things in terms of the depth of communication. Ironically, with most couples I work with, texting is off limits between the couple because they tend to misread each other's texts, and so I'm like, you are not mature enough to handle this tool. Stop it. Call them. And that's interesting. Yeah, video game addiction, online shopping, invasion of privacy, predators, viruses, malware, that's still true. You have to watch what you open. Identity that's becoming more and more prevalent. It's already happened to my teenage son, where someone stole his credit card, things like that. Things start happening on his little tiny bank account. But it's a problem. And so we start with this. We start with our dangers. What are the things we need to be aware of? And they're ever evolving. And I would say there's some of these that might be even more unique to your family. So you start there. Then what are the tools that we have? What are some tools that we can use to protect our family?
Communication.
Just basic communication, yes. It's amazing how many families go all week, and their communication is reserved for the weekend, if that. We're actually always communicating, even in our silence, or even in our lack of. But what I'm communicating is scary. It's, I don't value you, I don't value your time, I don't have time for you. That's scary. What are some of the tech filters or tech things we can think of?
Parental controls. Parental controls.
Parental controls? Use them, yes. What else? Apps, yeah. And then they also have their apps. The amount of apps that I keep finding that have a browser embedded in them. Like, dang it, didn't know that one either. So being careful what apps get on a phone is critical. I mean, these should be a no-brainer in terms of we know what they are, but do we use them or do we even implement them? But these kind of things like firewalls, virus protection, internet filters, parental controls, TV program locks, pop-up blockers. That's a starting point. There's so many more. I'm very concerned about smartphones. Yet, in my working with families and in my own family, it's coming back and forth. We've tried the Gab phone, we've tried the pinwheel phone, we've tried different ones. And it's interesting to see how some are great with certain kids, and they're not great with others because they'll have little different features. So it's not that simple. Like one of the things we were requiring was that our son never texts, only like one-to-one. Yet some of those phones only let you do one-to-one. They don't let you do group chats. And then others, it's one of our rules with Scouts too. You can't communicate one-to-one. It has to have a parent looped in. So, have you found any tools like that have been helpful? Phones or the like?
Dumb phones.
Dumb phones? I am finding those to be even more of a problem nowadays, actually with adults. Doesn't matter if the screen's that size, that tiny little size. It's amazing how inside that little browser I can still look up porn. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that some of these dumb phones, even those are becoming a problem because you can't lock them down and you can't. Yeah. It's very frustrating. And those are with adults. The teens will walk circles around the adults on that kind of stuff.
So what is the research saying about when you introduce a phone to your child? What's the age?
They're saying whatever gives the company money, because they're funding all the research, right?
You're looking at the wrong research.
Exactly. I don't trust it. I don't even... I keep hearing by 8th grade, I forgot the phrase they use. 8th grade is a great time to introduce it. I don't think so at all. 16 when they start driving. It's amazing how many of us, I think most of us survived driving without one. Maybe kind of, and didn't. But yet it's like, I can't let my kid not have the phone, because what if? Like, go to the vet and chip your kid. Then just kidding. That's what I wondered about, can we just chip our kids? But anyway, we're getting there. That's the scary part. That's another whole conversation with Elon Musk's research and other mark of the beast stuff. When do you say no to that stuff? Anyway. Or are we already marked with our phones? That's terrifying. So, anyone tried other kinds of devices? Have you heard what the research says about ages? Because from what I've gathered from it is, we so don't have a clue what we're doing right now. This is such an experiment because it's getting younger and younger and younger. Elementary school is more normal for elementary school. And they have to be able to communicate with me. What do you do with that? Where are you stressed about that personally?
I feel parents, I can't speak for everybody, but I feel like they use it as a distraction. Here, I don't want to deal with you.
So true.
Look at that.
So yeah, many use it as a babysitter. So true. See them in Walmart, shut the kid out basically, or at the restaurant. It's a babysitter. And that's doing a whole nother level of damage. The worst part is birth to 2. So when you're watching those devices birth to 2, that's where there's serious developmental impact. After 2, it's different. But there's still we're training them to have to be entertained at all costs, at all times. And that's honestly where we're at. It can't just be like unscripted time. That's becoming more of a difficulty. Or silence, which we'll talk about in a minute. You have to have earbuds in. Have to have noise. So I had a counselor when I was in seminary. A counselor challenged me I want you to go for 24 hours in silence. I could not do it the whole time I saw him. And what I realized was I didn't want to be alone with me. But yet I wanted to marry someone that would be alone with no. I had some growing up to do. And I remember I went through a season, a very dark season, of just being alone and living alone and having to overcome some of that. I hear for the groups that I'm in, a lot of the parents say 18.
To give them a phone?
Yes.
Where does that happen?
Amen.
Where does that happen?
Where does that happen? Great question.
I
Okay, there's one road in the back.
We run into issues because they need to have phones at school to take pictures of their assignments, and it got to be kind of a problem.
Okay.
But we did say that the senior year we wanted another phone so they helped them navigate that transition. So we made them wait.
Nice. Good
didn't
job.
want to wait by the time you saw what was happening all the time.
That's what I'm seeing from some teens, is they're seeing what's happening with their friends and going, oh my goodness. We let one of ours get it too early because he was flying to Texas to see family, and then we never took it back. That was a mistake. But it became this, I don't understand the conversations at youth group. And so, sure, get these apps and see what they are. And so he paid for them and got them. And then he, after a few months, was like, can I get a refund? I don't like these. These are stupid. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. But he realized how they're all stupid. And he moved on. But watching his friends where they can't sit at a meal together has really affected one of our kids. The other one's different.
Well, what I deal with a lot with my wife, especially on the gaming stuff, is she had several people when she moved to the dorms at OSU. They never been allowed to have games at all. And they never left the dorm room once they had that freedom. So, now she doesn't have, in my opinion, too much. And it's become an issue with that too.
Yeah, games. And to me, that's where a line possibly could be drawn really clearly when it comes to the phones. This is a tool, not a toy. But it's hard when you use it as a toy too. When we're over there playing Angry Birds or Bejeweled or whatever other weird thing we're playing, do what I say, not as I do, is kind of our message too often. It really starts with us. Well, how are we stewarding our phone? You know, my wife's one of those where she can't ever find her phone, so that's another whole frustration.
Well, and I've also learned, like my son, he can't sit on a device for very long, but now he's like lying to his friends and saying, my mom is making me get off. Which I'm glad that he's jumping on the trampoline and like recognizing that, but I'm also worried that he has to lie to his peers that he needs to get off because he's worried about the repercussions of that.
And one of the things we've done with ours is that exact, but we give them that permission, which I guess maybe that is bad to make them have them lie, but it's like if you ever need an out, I'm the bad guy.
Right.
I'm the ogre over here. You throw me under the bus, you tell them you've got this horrible, oppressive, terrible parent. I will play that card, I will love it. You kind of want that, especially if they need that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's when he was younger, he wouldn't recognize when he was getting upset. And so sometimes I'd have to step in and he'd be like, no, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, I'm making the decision now. You're choosing not to get off and you're obviously dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
But now he's learned how to do that himself. Like when he gets upset, he's like, oh, I gotta go, my mom's keeping me off. But I was also worried that he doesn't feel safe, like to say like, hey, I gotta take a break. Like
And that tends to be, peer pressure. Yeah. And I think that's more even developmental and he'll learn that. But I would not be as concerned about that. I would give him that out, always that out, till he can. We were having lunch yesterday with some college students in our living room. We just moved the table into this room. It used to be our Xbox room and switched the Xbox room to a different room. But there's holes, plaster covering, or what do you call that stuff, covering holes in the wall from our middle son. It's like, so we were talking about X Games. I was like, no. Blaze, here's one of his holes here, and here's another one of his holes. Oh, and there's a TV here that he hit with his fist because the internet was slow. So what do? Well, he painted our exterior of our house. So if you ever need labor, by the way, when I finally did the math, $25,000 I think I saved for our whole family. But I was keeping track of hours, and he was paying me in hours. So we painted the whole exterior of our house. The three kids, they were not even teenagers yet, and me. So I got the high stuff, basically. Make them earn it. Make them feel it. Some are actually more attuned to their body. One of our kids realized that they have gut issues when they play too long. I'm like, oh great, you have what I have. I have Crohn's, and please don't open that door. If your body's responding with the same kind of stressor here, you need to, and he just stopped playing for 2 years. Which is great. It's not how it works normally. So how do you help regulate that? How do you help the boundary of that? Because what is our goal? What's our purpose? And here's the problem with 18. If it's just 18, the circles I'm in, homeschool families. We homeschool our kids. And 18 comes, they don't necessarily hand them a phone. The kid leaves. They go get a phone, and there are no boundaries. And they go off the deep end. They have to go make up for all this lost time. They do that with drugs, they do it with alcohol, they do that with all sorts of other sinning, if you're not careful. I'm seeing that in that community that I've been a part of for 12 years now. So it's interesting to look at that, and then to look at, any of the conversation of public school, private school, homeschool. I don't care where you go to school, you're going to have problems. The pressure of peers, the pressure of this stuff. So it's the relationship with. These are devices that are here to stay. Now, I spoke at a church, or actually at a Western Christian, that's the right name? Yeah, Western Christian. In 2019. Had a dad come up to me afterwards, and chew me from one end to the other. And he, actually the granddad, he was like, you should be telling every single one of these parents to never ever let their kids have a phone. They're all evil. They're all wrong. Don't. And I'm like, honestly, if I said that, no one would listen. If I just said that. You're going to have to make the decision. And I think 18 is actually smart. Are there exceptions to that? It's a risk. But what was his problem? He had grandkids, I guess, he was kind of there but not there. He's like, I don't exist anymore, the relationship. Like, that's another whole problem, parenting problem, but I think that's where our problem ends up being a lot of times. As parents, how do we govern this thing that is so new to even us? This is disrupting families. It's getting in the way. I can take it to the bathroom. I can go anywhere. I think this is a problem.
So you're saying 18, but how do you also teach to where they don't go off the deep end when they decide, oh, I got all this freedom, I'm not under mom and dad's thumb, I got all this, I'm making $12 an hour, $15 an hour, I'm making a huge amount of money, and I'm just gonna, go crazy.
But then that's actually where
when I was there.
That's where I think we need to then start somewhere. So like I mentioned to the young high school and middle school, I said my rule of thumb for dating is you can start dating your junior and senior year of college. Is that realistic? For some, they're going to be like, okay. Or some are just going to do that because they're focused on, I'm here to get a degree, or I'm here to study, or I'm struggling, so I need to focus on my studies. Or I want to be a doctor, and I'm going to be in school all the time. I need to hunker down and do this, and then I'll figure that part out later. Everyone's got a different path. So my 15-year-old has a girl he likes and has liked for a while. Are they dating? No. Might as well be. But the boundaries around it in the conversations are what are enriching. Constant conversations. Their family and our family are on the same page. That they're not dating. That's not how all their friends act like. So what is it? We need to be careful that we're not doing what culture is doing, which is pairing everyone up, and everyone should be sexual now, or something's wrong with you. And there's kind of a free reign. Should they go back to their bedroom? Should they? No. Take hinges outdoors if you have to, but no. For a long time, we even had our boys' bedrooms had loft beds on purpose because we were in a house that had no other really space, and so we wanted their bedrooms to be accessible for Legos and other stuff and playing, but beds are off limits. Boy or girl, someone else is not allowed to sit on your bed. That worked for a while when they were littler, and then that stopped working, so we have rearranged that. So it's an experiment of trying to figure out how am I serving them. And imagine your own bandwidth. You don't have a lot of bandwidth to be thinking about this. And that's where this next piece here, education. This is what I spent last time talking about. We need to prepare them. We need to have these conversations. They're not going to bring up that they sent a naked picture to someone. They're not going to bring that up. So you need to actually be talking about it, using an example, using something you heard, using a clip in a TV show or movie, but kind of going, hey, this is really dangerous. Here's why. So let's talk. Because what you don't want is to find, oh, holy smokes, you're looking at your kid's phone and there's something that you know is actually technically illegal. It's called child pornography. You don't want that. And so how do you deal with that? You help prepare them. You don't talk to them ahead of time. Help develop in them a theology of marriage. Why marriage? Because our world's saying, you do you, whatever makes you happy. And it's like, no, here's why marriage. I love Bodhi Bacham, what he talks about with his kids. He said, I am raising my sons to be husbands and fathers, and my daughters to be wives and mothers. I said, no, great. But that's the goal. That's the design. So we want the men to grow up to be trustworthy men, hardworking men, have certain values, and they need to know what those are. Why are they doing that sport? Just because they wanted to? I'd say that's not good enough. Why? What are they getting out of it? How is the coach pushing them and encouraging them? Who's influencing them? Like those kind of conversations lead to very different outcomes where you actually might be mid-season and you're talking to your kid and they're like, this is toxic, this is bad. And you're like, you're out, no problem. Or another conversation is going to be like, no, you need to finish the commitment. You made a commitment to this team, you're going to finish. So we want like cookie cutter answers, do this or don't do that. It's like each of our families are so different and kids are so different. We need to be careful with that. We're guiding them in a story that we don't know. We don't know what God's doing in their life. We don't know what's next. But I hope protecting too, to some extent, to the best of our ability. So how do I protect my kid? I prepare them. Yesterday I went to pick up my daughter from someone's house, and I drove into this part of town, and I just had a text from my wife with the address. I didn't know where I was going, and got to that part of town, and I'm like, this is getting sketchy. This is my 13-year-old little girl. It's like, oh, my girl. So park, and it's dark. Again, I'm kind of stressed a little. This is my girl, but she's just at she's at the youth pastor's house. He just bought a house in this part of town. I know all the people around, like the friends that were coming out of the house, and you kind of go, okay, you're good, you're fine. But how many times did we not do that? That we dropped them off at a friend's house? So some rules of thumb, like Sean McDowell's dad, Josh McDowell. He's said about 2005, 6, somewhere in there, he was saying, you know what, sleepovers are a thing of the past. We need to stop it. And he starts giving all these stats. It's kind of scary, some of the stats he gave. I'll give you a few in a minute. But one of the rules of thumb that I've heard from some parents has been, like, if my son's going to stay at this person's house, all the females in the house go somewhere else. So there's no other girls in the house, or vice versa. Logistically, that can get hard. Like when there's family nearby or grandparents, or it becomes easy. It's actually not a bad rule of thumb. We have some families that started happening as their kids got older, because ours was a hard line no for sleepovers for a long time. Is it a risk every time? Yeah. That's one of those. Yet, more often than not, abuse tends to happen in your own home by someone you know. So, again, we're not necessarily, we need to be careful with, hey, we've kind of covered all our bases. No. Even right in our own home, stuff can happen that we're just not aware of. I've talked to three young ladies that I was kind of interested in kind of getting to know as potential dates. 2 I met on eHarmony at one point in time. But their story was literally, mom is in the kitchen and they're around the corner in the hallway being molested by some neighbor kid within feet of mom. What is the sexual abuse numbers for men and women before the age of 18 in America? I teach a whole class at Corbin on this in trauma therapy. It's heartbreaking. If you look at the stats that are published and talked about, we're talking about 4 out of, that's the right number, 25%, 35% for girls, or for boys. I'm trying to get the numbers right now. I don't have it up. It's not as bad as it seems at first. That's accounting for someone who actually touched me, someone who molested me, someone who raped me, some of that kind of stuff. When you account for those that I work with and those that I deal with, where there's actually not even been touch, there's been the threat of, or a violation that could have happened, but I was able to escape. So nothing actually happened, but now I'm forever traumatized and I'm still not okay 10, 20 years later. The numbers are actually 1 in 2 women and 1 in 3 men. So we think of our church, a church of a few hundred people. Half the church or so has experienced sexual trauma of some kind. Yet we don't talk about this topic. What are the boundaries? And what am I talking about? I'm talking about anything from physically touching someone, but there's also the trauma, especially at a young age, of when I was shown pornography. And I didn't know what to do with that or how to process that. Or I walk in on mom and dad, or mom and someone else, or dad and someone else. And what I don't know what to do with that. Or I'm taking a shower, and I'm getting out of the shower, and Uncle so-and-so walks in the room, and he just pauses and looks up and down and walks out. Nothing happened. Talk to her and see if nothing happened. My soul died that day, is what I hear. I never saw the world the same. I never saw God the same. I never saw relationships the same. I never saw men the same. 1 and 2. This is why I do what I do, because it's not okay. Actually, that means that more likely than not, or 50-50 here, but our daughters are going to experience something that we're not going to know about even. Our sons are going to experience something that we're not going to know about. Sometimes our sons are in a position where they didn't do anything wrong and there's an accusation. That ruins them. Or again, that you never know about, but it ruins them internally. They die inside. You've got to be able to pull that stuff out. That's hard. Part of the way you do that is in conversation. You're looking for different things that show you whether something has changed, what's gone on. We've had this happen with one of our kids where it was like, something's not right. I pushed harder. And then finally took his phone, and there was stuff that, because you can restore what they've deleted. It was such a cool thing, because in the moment it was relief that he had kind of been caught. Because secrets eat you alive. We need to be going there. We need to go into this. We need to be prepared to have this conversation, to teach. But then, what are the rules? I mean, I can give you some examples of this. Is your family. Some examples like this. TV and computers are in high traffic areas only. Great rule, still seeing kids with the computer literally bolted to the dining room table or to the bar there in the dining room or living room or kitchen, and they're still looking at porn and still doing stuff. It's not like they can't. But they're less likely to. Absolutely nothing in the bedrooms. See something inappropriate, click on the back button, receive pictures, or the messages do not reply until parents, and the messages are the one that's mortifying. I'm not getting bullied at school. I'm getting bullied at school, through text, through a Snapchat, through Twitter, through a Facebook message, through... We can't escape it. There needs to be a point in time where their phone turns off and it doesn't work. Because so many kids are still messaging at 3, 4, 5 a.m. Oh, my friend needs me. They're really struggling. Here's a suicide hotline, first of all, and there are adults that need to be taking care of that, not the child. Try to tell that to a child. To them, they're the only one that can fix this. I'm the only one they'll talk to. So you're dealing with that. Feeling like, just like for many of us sometimes, there's things you've probably been through where it's like, no one's been through what I'm feeling right now. Not true. It's how we feel. So you can't argue with me, because it's how I feel. I feel like I'm the only one. Never open attachments. Don't have an open device policy. Always have passwords. All of our passwords on all of our phones and all of our stuff, the same password. And it's so funny how much they fight me on that one. I want to change the password to my special number or my special... No. And so, it's 2 letters. It's really hard. A lot of our passwords are 2 whole letters. But you're in a relationship with them, helping them make decisions on things they actually can't make decisions on very well. but neither do we oftentimes. That's where we've got to really process that. And I would say, talk about it openly. At one point a few years ago, we got our whiteboard and kind of did, okay, what defines our family? It was a really fun kind of dining room conversation. And we were at a really pivotal point. We were looking at whether we were moving to another state, and whether had different job options, and Alex is trying to finish his Eagle project, and all these things, kind of timing. It was really cool because we expected to get lambasted, my wife and I. Just were very honest about even our own faults and just kind of our failures there. The only one they brought up was you're on your phones too much. But it was also a very eye-opening boundary. So when a kid walks in the room, I make sure I'm never on my phone. It's not 100% that I do that, but I'm trying to where if I hear steps even, I'm not on my phone. Just don't be on it. Don't even have it in my hand. They even done studies, and when you're sitting around a table at a meeting, and the phone is sitting on the table in front of you, even flipped over, you feel more distant versus out of sight completely. Pocket, yeah, but how many times have you also then have the smartwatch and it buzzes and you're like, and my clients know, because I do 3 to 6 hour sessions with my clients, usually in home. When I'm there, my phone does not get checked once and my watch does not get looked at once. There's just one time recently we were sitting in front of my house, and the first time that the husband looked at the watch, his watch, it had been 4 hours. It's like, isn't that awesome? Your marriage is falling apart. You don't have time to pussyfoot around. We're dealing with a crisis. It's like, imagine if you had done that over 4 weeks of 15-minute sessions. Good luck with that. It's like we're in a crisis. We're not moving here until we make a decision, see a change, see a commitment. And no, not one, that doesn't solve the problems, but it gets a direction. It gets us moving somewhere. There are times we need to do that as a family. Sit down and go, what are we doing? And why? Like, make that vision for the family. As your kids are getting into high school and older, it's vision for launching. Like, I don't know about your conversations with your kids at all. My kid, and I talk to parents all the time, they're like, well, you never know what's going to happen. And I'm like, I don't. But they understand that when they graduate from high school, there's the door. You're out of here. And it's kind of like with the whole commitment to raising a son that's a father and a husband. It's like, when if something happens, you know that we're going to be the first ones to be there to take you in and to care for you. But I'm training you towards, and not just there's the door, it's, and you're going to college. Just a matter of where. And it's a Christian school, and if you don't do that, then we're not paying for it. So, like, our boundaries are that. Here's what you can do, and beyond that, it's up to you. Each family has to decide what that looks like. What those boundaries are, and what the next step looks like. Because one of the crises we're seeing with especially sons is that son that's living in the basement still playing Xbox and funded by mom, and mom actually thinks that she's caring for him. No, most of the time. Are there exceptions? Are there issues that come up and traumas that come up and developmental stuff? Absolutely yes. So what is your mission, your bigger picture? Our oldest wants to join the Marines. And I'm like, not under this administration. Just kidding. He said to me, so not now. But he's like, he gets a free college education through Corbin or an affiliate of Corbin. So it's like, you can do that once you have your undergrad done. Can I make him do that? No. Actually, next February, he turns 18. He can literally go. So I'm planting seeds, but I don't have necessarily control, so I'm not trying to take control. Same for a phone. I'm planting seeds, but at some point, I'm actually having to let go of control. My oldest son went up to Portland with some friends, which is not something I was very much a fan of. I've been to IKEA, and the airport in Portland. That's about it. Oh, and Moda Center. Not a fan. Well, he went with some friends. As soon as he arrives, I get an alert on my phone. Life 360, 91 miles per hour. And I don't even hesitate. Grab my phone, call him, and chew him from one to I will come get you right now. This is not acceptable. Who do I have to kill? Because normally we text him and say, careful, dude. But yeah, 91, there's no even kind of okay with that. In those moments, you're planting seeds, too, certain boundaries that next year he's going to be somewhere else, in some other state, actually. And are we going to keep Life 360 at that point? Probably not. I don't know. Do we have parental controls for your 19 and 20-year-old on your phone? Actually, the coolest thing would be is if they said, yeah, please keep those. Because they see that that boundary actually is a protection for them from themselves. Now, I don't know if you experienced this, but I remember graduating from college, or from seminary, and I moved to my first apartment, and I had to go hook up cable. So I go to the cable company and get cable, and they come in cable packages. And I'm like, okay, whatever's the cheapest. So they give me the package. I go home and I flip through channels, and there's Cinemax with, I was like, holy crap, this is terrible. God, I had never seen this before. Basically at 10 o'clock, it's just porn. And I'm a single guy living alone. I went the next day to the place, and I was like, get this crap off my TV. No, we can't. You get it free for 3 months. I mean, no. And by the way, get rid of all those sports ones too, because I'm not going to... No, you can't do that. But it was like, if I had access to it, so think of a smartphone and think of YouTube, or think of Pornhub for that matter, and I'm living alone, why aren't they going to watch whatever they want? Which is where we start prepping them when they're 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. To be stewards at 18, 19, 20 when I really don't have a say. Unless they give me that chance to have a say. And so I start prepping them. We looked at this last time. You go to Google, it's a simple. Type in porn, here's what shows up. Pornhub and other websites. But that top section, videos and images in your life's never the same. It's that close to even a little kid, on grandma's iPad. So I've talked to a lot of families who, I've locked everything down, they have no access, and they're visiting grandma, and they discover her iPad, and they're into a whole mess that the parents had no idea about for years even. They would have it, they said, hey, I've got a conversation to have with you. Have you looked up pictures of naked people? Why would I do that? Curiosity. You've got a body, you're curious, your brother or sister is different. Curiosity. What is the boundary between you and your sibling? To protect your daughter. Conversations that moves things out of the unconscious into the conscious, where I now must make choices. Engaging my prefrontal cortex, even though it may not be fully developed. I'm engaging my prefrontal cortex to make decisions that either give me what I want or honor you, Lord. Because here's some scary stats. Only 1 in 10 teens and 1 in 20 young adults say that their friends think viewing porn is a bad thing. This is a Barnard Report partnership with Josh McDowell. And it's old stats, 2016. 49% of young adults say all or most of their friends use porn regularly. That number is way up from that, even from 2016. You talk to almost any sex therapist and they will recommend couples in using pornography as a part of their learning and enhancing their sex life. That's a no, 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 no. As bringing in other people, other images, that's not acceptable. We can go straight to Scripture and answer that one without any hesitation. 90% of teens and 96% of young adults are either encouraging, accepting, or neutral when they talk about porn with their friends. So it seems to be a normal conversation. And I remember when this started, TV show Friends, where they normalized getting porn and keeping porn and watching porn and engaging porn and having a porn stash. And it was the culture using media normalizing, just like Ellen DeGeneres and that TV show Ellen, that first kiss, two women, changed everything with what TV allowed. You know what the goal of Glee was? The producer of Glee, I don't know if you remember that TV show, very well produced, incredible music. The goal of that producer, he said it very vocally, it didn't happen, but his goal was to have the first anal sex scene on network television. First rear entry scene. Wouldn't that be amazing? Let's put that on my tombstone. My goal is to have... What a sick goal. Heartbreaking. Luckily it didn't happen, but now with what kids are actually consuming on their phones, I feel like TV and Netflix that's nothing now, which is again scary. 51% of teens and young adult women, porn users, have sent a nude image via text, email, or app. What would push me to take a picture of myself and send it? Besides my prefrontal cortex still needing work. This is what ties into a lot of times for us men, dads. Our role as a dad in our daughters' lives is so pivotal. The influence we have, the care, the love, the touch, the protection, the guidance. Because if they don't get it from us, they will find someone to get it from. And there's a documentary on sexting. I do not recommend it. It's got too much junk in it. It is not well done. But it's very opening. The demographic of those sexting has actually gone up into the 30s to 50s. Because we have this new technology, a new tool. And what a great way to enhance my love life than to send a little message here and there to my spouse even. But it's changing things. Boudoir pictures is becoming so normal among Christian couples. I don't understand that personally, but 1 out of 3 Americans seek out porn at least once a month. That's 1 out of 3 just in general. If you're a young man who is not a practicing Christian, you probably use porn regularly. So you're starting to draw a distinction here. There actually is a difference for those that claim to be Christian. Now, the question is there much of a difference? That's what I did my dissertation in, and there was not much of a difference. It was actually really sad. If here's where we're supposed to be and here's where we are, like in general population, it was like we were here. That's not the goal. We should be in a very different place as Christians. So 13% of practicing Christians seek out porn at least once a month compared to the 42%. That's actually a big number, big difference. They do pastors' conferences, and what happens at the hotels surrounding the pastors' conferences. Same for what was the big men's conference? Oh goodness, those big rally conferences. Promise Keepers, yeah. Oh, I love those. Those are so amazing. But porn use in all the hotels around goes up. Really sad, some of those stats. 55% of adults 25 plus say viewing porn is wrong. Half still. Which means the other half is fine. 32% of teens and young adults say viewing porn is wrong. And that's going down. And I'd say it's gone way down since COVID. Because it's gotten so normalized. Teens and young adults rank not recycling as more immoral than viewing porn.
Ouch.
Yeah. Crazy. 90% of children ages 8 to 16 view porn. The thing is this is our homes, where some have talked about it, some haven't. It's been addressed at school, it hasn't been addressed at school. Friends are doing it, other friends are not doing it. They've got, again, the variety of what we have. So all we can do is really prepare and have conversations. But the piece I see, the part that I see is the problem potentially is we got to initiate the conversations. So if I'm not comfortable initiating it, it's not going to happen. I've got to get comfortable. It's funny to do what I do for a living now because I was never comfortable in any of this stuff. My wife and neither of us had any talk or any conversations like many of you. The generation before, no conversations, no prep, no. I remember the first time I saw a Playboy. It was like I was in college, going, "Wow, why are all these articles in here? That's a waste of space." Anyway, sorry, I'd never seen one. Interesting. And then, oh my gosh, this is creepy. And then a roommate who, we finally got an email in my middle of college, and I refused to ever check it because I still wrote letters. And all of a sudden, I had a roommate looking at porn on his computer. Changes everything. Like, we've come a long ways. So here's what, kind of adding to what you have, and you start thinking through a plan. Here's kind of 3 pieces that I use to think through this. So it's my vision for growth and maturity. And you have a code, a vision, and a cause. These 3 pieces. So the vision piece here in the middle. I need to actually help my sons understand a vision for masculinity. What does it mean? But also knowing the nuances of that. I remember my dad and mom fighting. I've never heard them fight. I remember this argument in the office, and I walked by their office and stormed up the stairs when I heard it. My mom is saying to my dad, "You need to take your son out and play ball more." And my dad's like, "But he doesn't like that kind of stuff." And I remember stomping up the stairs going, "Yeah, that's right, so leave me alone." What's my heart cry though? Even if I didn't like to play ball.
Spending time with your dad.
See me, exactly. See me. Thing is my dad's a former physicist for NASA, who ranks on all the scales of needing human contact or human encouragement as 0, and his son ranks on the other side of that scale. Emotional basket case. Like, couldn't get more disconnected. And so, yeah, I needed him. I needed him to see me. I played every instrument I could get my hands on. I was in music and played, all the music stuff. Loved orchestra and conducting and choirs, and that was my world. So him bridging that gap, because I'm not going to bridge that gap as a kid. They've got to bridge that gap to me. I'm having a hard time now on the other end of that. My oldest son is obsessed with football. I've never sat through a full game in my life. Ever. How? I don't understand it. And he watches every game he can, and he's obsessed. He's not doing the fantasy football stuff, which I'm actually surprised, but he'll probably start that soon. We're in college. So what am I doing? I'm actually learning how things work. I'm learning how things go and trying to understand it and having conversations and actually remembering some names and paying attention. Why? To keep that connection with him in that area. Even though we have some other touch points, and like in 2 weeks we're going to go to 8 caves and do our weekend camp out with scouts. And I'm always there at those. We just finished the Eagle Project. Got those connections. How do you make those connections? You've got to actually be intentional. But it's not just masculinity for my boys, it's masculinity for my daughter, her to understand what that looks like too, right? To where she understands, that's not a man. Sorry. Well, you've got to define that. And for my daughter, back femininity, what does that mean? Does she have to like all frilly things and twirly things? No. What does that look like? Give her her first pistol. Come on. Raise your right. And then her vision for, what does it mean? Masculine and femininity. Same for spouse standards. The amount of conversations I've had with a young lady who's got this best friend for 10 years, since high school, since middle school, and they're not a believer. Boundary. No. Don't care how amazing they are. If you're going to follow Scripture, that is not someone you want to literally get in bed with, to do life with. And then, what are you not going to do? Wouldn't it be amazing for them to have such a deep-seated understanding of their own temptations, their own desires, and to define it not all as sin, but as things to be stewarded? And then when they're dating that young man or young woman, it's okay to think this and to feel this and to want this and all that, but I have boundaries. So we're not going to go there. The thought of even having sex with my wife before our wedding was not even, that was humorous. Because we both had that same understanding of no. Boundary. Desire? Yeah. Boundary. Help instill that through what we do when they're actually in the single digits, as we talked about last week. More of this is probably instilled in them in their single digits before 10 or 11 than it is in their actually adolescence. Here we're just stirring the pot. Here we're messing with them. Here we're deepening some understandings in high school. But then the idea of a family code. When they look back at their mom and dad, oh, you were so strict. Oh, you had these rules. What's so crazy is how many of those they're going to repeat. But you'll get to that conversation later when they're... I love when one of my sisters is like, I'm so acting like mom. It's like, yep. What's crazy is that's not all bad. And so a lot of times we either act just like them or we rebel to the other extreme. And it's like, what if there's somewhere in the middle here we need to land? So be careful with that. We need rites of passage. We don't do that well in America. What does it mean that I'm a man? That's a scary answer when you ask a bunch of kids or a bunch of young adults, even college students. What does it mean to be a man? When I've had sex the first time. When I had alcohol the first time. It's like, nope. What does it mean? We don't have the definition in the United States. And there's some really good groups like the Knights one, I forgot the name of the Lewis. They does a good job of teaching about rites of passage. Yeah, Modern Day Knights. We got Modern Day Knights. Love him. Love that. And a lot of the work from Eldridge, John Eldridge, just a great job. And he's someone who's like, I didn't have a dad, and I had sons, and I gathered with other dads who didn't have dads who had sons, and how do I love on these guys? And they created these systems to measure that, if you will, to encourage, to empower. We need those. They need significant tasks, things that they will do and accomplish. They need logical consequences. We don't have helicopter parents anymore. It's lawnmower parents, snowblower parents. Got to make it all nice and smooth. No, they need to fall. They need to face the music when they didn't do the work, when they didn't bring something to school, and they, sorry, you bring it tomorrow. And is there a time and place to rescue them? Yes, there is that too, but careful when that's the default all the time. And then grace deposits. Was your home grace-filled, or was your home devoid of grace? We're like, hey, no matter what, you can call me. If you're at a friend's house and then you end up going over across the street and there's a party, and I don't care what's going on, you call me. There's this permission that I will come, and I'll come in silence and get you out. What does that look like? Do they understand? Because shame enters the picture and Satan has a heyday. And then the last one, there was finding a cause to fight for. I feel like this is hugely missing for even some of us potentially. Why are you doing what you're doing in your job or in your life? Because I talk to young girls who go, you know what? I wouldn't want to be like my dad or marry someone like my dad to save my life. They look up to him and he hates his job, he hates his life, and he doesn't like his marriage. No, you need to show, you're living it out, show life. And one of the biggest ones that I'm starting to see in the research from the Toxic Masculinity from Nancy Pearcey, the kind of book I'm reading recently, is be involved in your local church or in some kind of church ministry. Be involved, be involved, be involved, and it changes so much as men especially. Help with grounds, hand out bulletins, find some space or place to serve. And we're a different example when we actually love what we do, we like what we do, like when we like our wife, we treat her with respect and dignity, but finding a cause to fight for. I think if we actually spent the next few hours and just kind of talked through, I bet you there are things inside of you that you maybe have expressed, but also others that haven't expressed, that God's been stirring in you to go do this, to start this, to try this, to volunteer here, to help there. And it starts for you in two places. Your local church and here, where your kids attend school. Not because you have to. Actually, it's because you must. It's part of their life. You're involved in their education. And you get to serve. So what does that look like? And really, a lot of it's attitude change. Because a lot of us may not change our job, but what we really need is an attitude towards our job change. My attitude towards my job was not very good during COVID. I don't obey well, and masks are stupid. And so that was hard. And wanted to quit many times. Attitude. Because one of the things we've seen is my attitude during that season actually was a huge negative to my kids. Because I was always batting off the conspiracy theories, because they all came true. Just kidding. So I was very vocal, and then I crossed the line, and I kept saying, God is brown, I said this, and, being sarcastic. You know what the definition of sarcasm is? Which our family has a spiritual gift in? You know what the definition of sarcasm is? Flesh eating. Sarcasm is cannibalism. We're laughing, making fun of the governor of Oregon at her expense. That's Jay Leno and what the old guy, David Letterman. They make money off of laughing at people. It's evil. So boy, I had to repent. Some of us may need to repent. I want to give you three things to kind of wrap up. Time here, okay? 3 things we need. So, a really good book that I highly recommend, a secular book that's really encouraging about media. It's called Digital Minimalism. Cal Newport. Ironically, he has no social media whatsoever, never has. And he's writing a book about it. It's kind of funny. But he discovered this amazing thing that humans need. That it's like he just discovered the Holy Grail. And this is the Word. I start laughing. I'm like, you haven't read Richard Foster's book called Celebration of Discipline and all other ancient research on, spiritual disciplines. Solitude. We need solitude. They found that when you listen to 3 or 4 podcasts in a row, you remember less and less and less. Your brain needs to pause between and needs some silence to file away and then start the next one. The way that we can consume and consume and consume and consume and consume is not a good thing. We're getting dumber and dumber and dumber. And I'm seeing it as a college professor. These students are getting dumber and dumber and dumber in terms of just basic skills even. A number of years ago, they'd walk in and they actually knew how to use computers, fix computers, work on computers. They were pretty tech savvy on stuff. Now it's like, where do I push? Where's the drop down of what? Huh? They only know little basics. It's interesting. But here are 3 crucial benefits provided by solitude. New ideas, when I can be in silence and solitude. an understanding of the self, and closeness to others. So critical that we have this time. So that counselor back when I was in seminary that said, I need you to spend time in silence. I couldn't do it. I didn't want to know myself. I was hating myself. I had recently come out of a very suicidal season in life and an engagement that had broken up and was now studying to be a marriage counselor, and I'm a single guy. To me, God was cruel. And by the way, I graduated and I was a marriage counselor for 2 more years as a single guy. Because God's also going, you just be faithful. Didn't want to hear that. That's what He was doing in my life. Solitude is about what's happening in your brain, not the environment around you. And the cool stuff, the research from the last 5 to 10 years on neuroscience is fascinating. And what's happening in the brain. If you're going to take a class, you're way better to take handwritten notes than to type, because of what happens in the brain. There's so many really cool things that happen. Yet, watch teens. Earbuds in, music always on, always being entertained. Well, this starts young. The second one is leisure. Now, I am not a fan for the phrase self-care. I actually really can't stand that phrase. I get mad when I hear it. Sometimes I have to contain myself. At the same time, we do need to take care of ourselves. And there's a balance between the two. You need to be careful what you eat. I'm on week, 7, I think, 8 of eating just fish. And every time I deviate outside of that, I end up in Crohn's flare up and I'm back to just fish. I'm very careful, and so I'm cooking by myself and eating by myself. Because I know that works in my body right now, as I'm trying to heal the inflammation in Crohn's. And it's stupid is how tempting everything is. And so yesterday we had college students over and they're all eating food that Kelly and others made, and I'm just standing there. I ate later. Not fun. Leisure, though, is different. I'm sorry, I'll go back to that one second. Yeah, leisure is going to be something that you do. Well, let me ask this question. What do you do for leisure?
Hiking.
Hiking. Great.
Mow the lawn.
Mow the lawn. That's weird, but yes, just kidding. That's a happy place for a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah, mow the lawn. Did that on Saturday, yes.
Reading.
Yes. You know the average American reads less than 1 book a year? The average American reads less than 1 book a year. Well, our family makes up for it, so. Yeah. What else?
Horseback riding.
Horseback riding. Nice. My daughter loves horseback riding, but I like my horse. It's got lots of horses. Harley riding. Camping. Oh, that's one of my happy places, yes.
Just,
Board games.
Board games.
just tinkering.
Tinkering. Oh, I love tinkering. Yeah. I can spend hours in the garage on engines and just I buy a car or something. I love tinkering. Yep. It does something different in my brain. My brain goes to somewhere else. And for me, I'm not thinking of clients' problems or my students' stuff. Certain places where I can go into that space. It's hard to find. It's actually where watching a football game is actually restful. But on your 3rd or 4th game, okay, get up and go mow the lawn. But it's neat to see even the science behind sitting and watching a game is actually, and more so for men than for women, it's restful. And so we were watching some game recently, and I came in towards the end, and I was like, I'm actually stressed. I could care less the results right now, but this is stressing me out. How close the game is, and my wife just starts laughing. She knows how much I don't care. But the stress, it hits me so hard. I have to be so careful. What's another leisure thing?
I watch television.
Watch television, yeah. And there can be good stuff and there can be not so good stuff. Yes, what we consume, we kind of veg out.
Day trips to the coast or
Mhm.
visiting with friends or.
One of the things that I miss, that I wish we could bring back, and some families do really well, we used to have this space that you didn't get to sit down for a meal until you did what? Prepared it. But now it's all fast, and and the preparation time used to be a time of bonding of families and others. Unless you have one of those that it has to be their way or the highway, and there's a whole other problem. But there's something about those seasons, those times of doing. It's Thanksgiving is less. Yes, it's about the good food, but the prepping of the food. Some families do a good job of that, some don't. We need these different kinds of areas of leisure. It literally is doing something different with the brain. So if you do a job that's more manual labor or focused on things and doing, leisure might be around more people. If you deal more with people, it might be around tinkering and escaping that. So it's figuring out what works for you. 2015 study by Common Sense Media found that teenagers were consuming media, including text messaging and social networking, 9 hours per day on average. My question though is that number too low?
I'd say that's old data too.
Depends on if they're in school.
I mean, if you count when, like at our school, their phones are parked during class, so if you count from the time they wake up until they turn it off, maybe that might be 9 hours, but they're not.
Well, no, so engage with the phone.
Yeah.
Engaging with the phone. Or other kinds of media. And not just that it's on, but have you ever sat and figured yours out?
Mm-hmm.
It tells us everything.
Maybe just how much everything, the phone to sitting watching television to whatever else. Some of my students started surveying it during the lockdown. February of last year or 2 years ago, they locked us down. We had to cancel school for like 2 weeks because everyone's going to die or some weird thing. They studied students what they did during that time. And it was interesting to watch, again, the spike of this kind of stuff, the use of media, video games and media. And so we started looking at, so fast forward, what was our time, our average? Mine's probably 15 or more. If you think of when you're even doing Zoom calls and you're working and you're teaching and what are they seeing? Our culture has changed. Computers rule the world. My son was like, I'm going to be an engineer, he said one day. So we toured the U.S., went all these schools, engineering, and then he came home and was like, oh, why am doing engineering? That's in front of a computer screen. So he just started his second week at Corbin working grounds, and he's smiling when he comes home. Because he hasn't had to deal with humans. That's pretty much why. He did a year at Chick-fil-A and he came home mad every day. Because he didn't like people, but personalities. Our other son's the exact opposite. The third one is this one, though. Conversation. Now, where do our teens especially have the conversations?
Not at home,
Yeah.
but not locally.
Yeah. Vocally would be the ideal. That's not what they're doing. And it's really neat. I've seen students going, hey, so-and-so isn't here. And they pull their phone out and they'll do a quick Snapchat to them. And it gets to them and then the person tends to be running late and coming into class late, or, hey, thanks for waking me up. And that kind of thing. These are tools that are great. But there's a difference here. So connection, the low bandwidth interactions that define our online social lives. Conversation, the much richer, high bandwidth communication that define our social lives. Texting is not, yes, it's communication, but it's not the same. You've got to help them see the difference between that. It's a great tool. Quick, especially. Maybe there should be a word count like Twitter used to have. texting back in the old days when you had to hit the button 3 times to get it, that kind of stuff. Some kids are pretty talented at that. I never could do it, but texting, no. It's communication. It's a great tool, but we need that social. Do you have any kids that will not pick up the phone and actually call them? That's what I'm seeing a lot. And I say we need to push that. But another place that can happen too is in the context of work or in the context of doing life together. How we embody conversation. So my wife and I were on a date at a Chili's. I can't remember what state we lived in at the time. And looked over next to us, and there were 8 or 10 college students. And on the end of the table was a pile of iPhones. And there was one girl in charge. And at one point we saw them, someone needed the bathroom, so 4 or 5 were in the bathroom, so she passed out all the phones. They all were checking their phones, and then as soon as the last person came from the bathroom back, she pass them back. She sat them all at the end of the table. And they'd make a noise and everyone would look at the phones, and it's so weird, our relationship with these crazy devices. But I was really proud of that girl for saying boundary. Because you might have even done this. How many times are we with people when we're not with people? Or you're sitting in front of a friend and you're texting others. So how we do this is critical, but then we need to be constantly in conversation and pay attention to this. Do you like it when you're talking to so-and-so and they pull out their phone and just start talking to someone else? Like, it needs to hurt a little. So they actually kind of social pressure go, we don't do that. But that's going to start in the home. Because one of the things that's happening right now, this is a scary one, is the isolation. We feel more disconnected. The research is showing we are more unhealthy than we've ever been. About 2 years ago, I kept saying that the pandemic hasn't started. It's starting now. And it's going to be with anxiety and with suicidality and with isolation and with loneliness. And so some of the researchers are saying we have a loneliness epidemic right now. It is heartbreaking. And it may even be one of our own kids in our own house. And we don't know it. We need to check in with them.
What do you mean by that? I mean, did not pandemic cause that? Did work as a follow-up of the pandemic?
I would say it exposed. So it exposed already problems and it made it worse. Like how some families handled it, I would say their kids were very less impacted by it. Other families and family structures, more so. So there's another whole field right now that's really fighting about the equity of those kids that had access to a mom and dad at home and those that didn't. Or had access to a parent at home where others didn't. And so what are we trying to do? We want to make the smart kid less smart because they had, what's the phrase? It's an advantage, right? There's actually a bill put in place years ago, it never got anywhere, but it actually said that it should be illegal to read to your children until kindergarten. Because that is giving them an advantage over other kids. Should be. Yeah. But there are a lot of kids who don't have that. And what's interesting, and this is another whole subject, but it's interesting, kids who don't have that reading and don't have some of those people that see them when they're younger, they found that there's this shh, like white noise in their hearing. So they're sitting in school trying to pay attention, and it's like there's this constant shh. And they can't hear. It's like they haven't been engaged. And there's one thing that actually opens that up. There's one area that can actually change their brains, literally the mapping of the brain and the way the brain works. And it's the first area that we cut in schools. Music. Playing an instrument, learning to play an instrument is one of the very few things that uses the whole brain. It engages the whole brain. It's probably one of the most important things we could do for our kids is actually that they learn some kind of instrument, even if it's just for a little while, because of what it does to the brain. We know this from research, but it's funny to watch. We still go acts. That's the first thing to go. It's that and drama and other stuff. It's like these things actually are important. Scratch English. They'll figure that out. Just kidding. Actually, there was at a homeschool conference one time. They said, you know what? You moms that are so focused on your kids reading, blah blah blah. You need to teach your kids. And this is where he went. Work ethic. It's like there's truth in that too. There's a lot of things we can hear from different places of what is the message I need to hear. I tell my college students that as we get through the semester, you get closer to finals and you feel more like you have a lot of disorders. And we're studying disorders and yeah, you feel like you have all of them. But your finals week can be something you just do and check off and move on. Because after it's over, it doesn't matter. For some of you, it's really dramatic. But there's two messages. Some of you need to ignore your friends until after finals, and you need to hunker down and get to work because you have not done your work. And yeah, it's time to do or die, pass or not. Tell your friends I'll see you in 2 weeks. But some of you actually need to stop working so hard and go to the movie, go to the coast, go do something. And then what was going to take you 6 hours to write that paper because you're so disconnected, and for 4 hours you went and spent some time with friends, and now you write it in 1 hour. We each have a different message as to what we need to hear, as to what we need for our health. But do we need solitude? Yes. Do we need leisure? Yeah, we do. Some of us have too much of it, but that has an impact getting work done. We need conversation. And so proposal here is a philosophy of technology use in which you focus your online time on a small number of carefully selected and optimized activities that strongly support things you value, and then happily miss out on everything else. You're in charge. I had a mom at a Sense class one time tell me, though, don't you dare tell us to cut the cable and cut the internet and have nothing in our house. Because my husband did that to us a few years ago, and they lived out in the country. And like, I felt so isolated and so lost, and she had babies at home, and it's like, okay, yeah, your story's different, because some need to hear that. Some need to hear, hey, you know what? Go out to that cable in your house and cut it. Because it's toxic what it's becoming in your home.
How did I cut the plug off of my TV when I was in college?
It's wise.
I just was depressed, and I just go and sit, and I wouldn't study, and I finally unplugged my TV, and I took a pair of wire cutter, cut the end of it off. It's like, that's it.
Nice.
You got to do it.
Nice. I had a client one time that she would give her modem to a neighbor. She was female and she had a porn addiction. She'd give her modem to her neighbor, except when you've got a problem and you're not actually dealing with it, that's a behavioral fix. Eventually, she worked at a library. Eventually, she started looking stuff up at work and got caught and got fired. Because the heart's what needs change, not just behavior. We can do some behavior modification things. We can change things with phones and have boundaries and have filters. And it's the heart. And that needs to be the area of prayer, of angst even in our spirit, of God protect them from themselves. Help us be wise in our choices to help prepare them for something we don't know is around the corner. So finding areas of even leisure that helps them do something, gets them outside, gets them a part of a project. You know, for my sons, I haven't done it yet for Blaze, he's 15, but Alex, who went and got an old truck. Never got that sucker running, so finally sold it. And then got a 1993 Jeep Grand Cherokee, which I still am surprised it's running, but he had the death wobble and all sorts of other problems, and I've learned a lot, he's learned a lot, but it's a skill. And he's learning from it, and learning responsibility, and learning, he pays his insurance to us every month. When we remember and then we forget, and then it becomes, oh, dang it, because we're not good at that sometimes. But he pays his own insurance. So what is your ethos as a family of how you want to develop this with them. And here's my recommendation with that. The more you can do it in relationship with them, there's going to be a lot more buy-in versus top-down. There's stuff that may need to be top-down. I said, we're doing it this way. But in relationship with them, it's a negotiation in a sense, but you have the final say. To help them steward something that in just a few years, they're on their own. They have to steward this themselves. So what are they doing with their time? What are they doing with their money? How are they treating others, men, women, old, young, authority? All these things are being taught either overtly or completely missed. Wrap up with this. This is something I put together. This is too many words on the page, on the slide, which my wife reminds me of, but I like it because my brain goes, you have the vision there in the middle, code and cause, and there are these 4 areas we have to cover with this. So what are these 4 areas? Their health, my health, your health, purpose, their soul, relationships, and work. So how do I cover these? If I'm thinking of a plan for each of these, I need to actually be thinking of these. I need to actually on the health, nutrition, sleep, and exercise. Maybe that's an area I need to work on. The exercise one I know is definitely one I've got to work on. I was talking to my doctor and he's like, you need to exercise, you're getting old. And I'm like, well, a few weeks ago I went skiing with my oldest son for 11 hours straight. Does that count? He's like, you can keep up? I'm like, yes sir. He goes, you're fine for now. Thanks. But it's good you're getting old, so. Purpose and soul, meditation, study, spiritual disciplines. We're teaching these things by our own practice as a family, how we encourage them to practice this, and then they will study the Bible or not. They will practice these things or not when they go off, and the stats are not very good when our kids launch. And where they go really matters in terms of who's influencing them to continue in these or not. The amount of college students I watch who they graduated even from Corbin and haven't stepped foot in church in a year or two. But I saw that when I was in seminary. It's like you're training to be a pastor and you haven't been to church in 2 years? It makes me sick. Well, I'm studying. No, I'm sorry. You're going to practically preach or you're going to, there's the door. It's like, that's scary to me. Relationships, your investment in these, the priority of them, community. How are you building that community? You need one another. Whether it's someone in this room, others in this room, others that aren't here, your church, your neighbors, family members, extended family. If you have a crisis an hour from now, who are you calling? Ironically, every name that comes to our mind in just this second is scout families. Because those are the ones that we go camping every month and years developing relationships with. And then your work. Are you a lifelong learner? What's your work ethic? And then there's that dumb word balance. How in the world do you balance that? Because I say, you know what, leisure, I'll deal with that when I'm 6 feet under. Self-care, I'll deal with that when I'm 6 feet under. I'm kind of joking, but not really. Because to me, the call is actually so heavy. The burden is so huge of what's needed. I hopefully will go down at some point still doing what I'm doing. That's my mission, my vision. What about you? And then what are these areas? My self-care, my passion, my team, and my fruits. And then I had to add more words to it, so to stress my wife out. I was like, okay, that's your physical, your psychological, your spiritual, social, relational, and then your behavioral. And there's the whole thing right there. It's like, we're complicated. So your son or daughter might need a piece of this that's focused on you. If I'm careful, you're missing this, but so are you. So am I. And when I have to deal with my physical health because of Crohn's stuff, It gets a lot of my attention, and I have to be careful with that. When you're dealing with the drama from some kid or a family member, they're getting a lot of your attention. You have to be careful because you're probably missing something else. Your spouse, your marriage, work's demanding. There's always and I tell my students this so even tonight, right now, I am not at Scouts. Monday nights are my Boy Scouts. I've only missed a handful of times in 12 years. The last 2 weeks, here, why? I love you, I love this, I love planting these seeds. But I'm not with my Scouts and my two sons. When I'm at my classes at Corwin, I'm with you and I value my students, but I'm missing my family. But guess what I'm thinking when I'm with my family? How are my students doing? How are my clients doing? I'm not with them. You're always torn, and hopefully it's a good thing. And my wife wishes I had an 8-to-5 job. That'll never happen. But boundaries. I've heard those are good boundaries. Many people say you need to read the book Margins. I'm like, yeah, I don't have time for margins. Whatever. And that's when you find things you love to do. You're going to do more of it. Which is why you tend to see a coach go all in and give everything to that because they love what they do. Hopefully, otherwise, there's probably better fit job for you. That kind of thing. If you're a teacher, goodness gracious, you're giving way more than you probably should. So our families need us. They need us to kind of be proactive in building this, talking about this, investing in this, understanding. And then planting seeds. What of this could you go talk to someone else or bring to a small group or to a Sunday school class or somewhere to be helping them think through and pray through and make their own decisions. And then one-on-one, it's a different story. Now we're talking detailed logistics for that. Like how you deal with your son that's breaking out of the house every Friday night. And that's a whole different story. When your son or daughter are sleeping with someone, how do you deal with that besides a big gun? What do you do? That's different. So I hope tonight was a chance to kind of think. And I hope that you can even take these sheets and whatever else you do and to be thinking through, praying through, give at least a little bit of attention in this area when it comes to, yes, we didn't touch necessarily social media. That's to me a no completely, but media and technology when it comes to our kids. I think we're going to look back in a few years with data that's going to absolutely horrify us. And that many of us will go, I think that old guy that came up to me in 2019 and said that you should tell everyone to don't use smartphones at all until they're, maybe 30, is probably right. I actually think that's what we're going to look back and see at some point, honestly. Because we're going to be mortified as to what we've done in this social experiment with our kids. So have those conversations. Be intentional. Let me pray for us. Dear God, thanks so much for this time to focus on you, Lord. To be thankful that we have our family. To be thankful for our kids. I call them experiments because they are, Lord, and you know that. So I just thank you so much that we are blessed with them. Help us lead well. Help us find that band of brothers and sisters around us to hold on to us when we have questions, to help us in making hard decisions when things are just tough, when I don't know what to do with my son and daughter. God, help us to find places where we can wrestle with what does Scripture say? What is wise right now? What would you do? And just ask and answer those questions, Lord. May we do well. And may they be in your hands, Lord. We know they are, but I just, again, lift each of our sons and daughters up to you, Lord, in prayer, and thankful that you hear our prayers and that you act. Thank you, Lord, so much for our families. Thank you for the school. Thank you for the investment that the school makes in each one of these kids and families and parents. just how critical that is. The community it is essential. It's part of how you make this. And thank you for this evening. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.